Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The Cinik Radio Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Agree?
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
You're damn right it is. What's up, guys? And this is episode 153 of the Cinik Radio Podcast, and I'm your Bully Maguire dancing host, Cinik. And joining me, as always, my web-slinging co-host, the amazing Igri, and the superior Ryan George. And on this week's jam-packed show, we are finally finding out what came from Florida, doing another edition of The Worst Person of the Week. And yes, we're a little late to the party because we wanted everybody to see it, but we are finally reviewing Sony's biggest movie of all time, Spider-Man: No Way Home. So IG, let's get this started with a little bit of, say, Worst Person of the Week.
So for me, this week, the worst person of the week is Kanye West. And it's not because of any of his stuff that he's doing with Kim Kardashian. You know, that's between them. And he's made it real public between them, but it's still between them. But this week, he released a new album, Donda 2. It's highly anticipated. His fans are wanting it, and he's got a huge fan base. And I'm not going to say he's not a great musician because he is. But there's a catch. You want to listen to his album, you got to order this $200 music device. It's called the Stem 2. You have the Stem Player. You have to order the Stem Player to do it. Now, the Stem Player is kind of a neat device. You can do things on it where you can remix things and do loops and stuff. But if you make this loop, the loop belongs to Kanye. So if you're sitting doing cool things with the music, making remixes and stuff that you maybe could put on, I don't know, a YouTube channel or a Twitch stream or something, you're now like owing Kanye money, basically. It's Kanye's stuff. So putting something out that is only available on one single platform that's not widely used, like Apple Music, Spotify, or something like that, and then charging people to get that device and then taking anything anybody does with it and making it your own, Kanye's the scumbag of the week.
Yeah, that's not a good look. I mean, with people's finances the way they are, we don't see another stimulus check coming. So if you have a job, you're trying to hold on to every penny that's worth. And I understand that these musicians don't like the fact that we're only paying 99 cents per song and nobody's downloading full albums anymore. But it seems a little excessive. But then again, so are the costs of his shoes. Have you ever looked at a pair of Yeezys? I'm not going to buy them. I respect the people that do and that like them, but I wouldn't fork over that kind of cash. Ryan, are you going to open your wallet and go get the new Kanye album?
Yeah, no. And I think up until the point where like anything that other people create still belongs to him, I was like, all right, fine. Like if you want to do that, you do that. Whoever buys it's going to buy it. That kind of sucks. It's weird because you've got, artists like him, and others who criticize the music industry because of practices like this. Because you could argue that, look, that type of practice has been going on in the music industry for a long time, that the industry and larger corporations take the work of artists, take the creative work of artists as their own and pay, peanuts to the artist. So you would think that as an artist, he wouldn't then do the same thing, because then you're kind of not immune from any criticism of the industry. So it kind of just sucks, from that perspective. Not surprised with him and that he would do that. And again, like, look, if you want to charge absurd amount of money for your album and have all kinds of bells and whistles with it, great. But to then like take other people's creative work, that does suck. I will just add one caveat. Might want to say that Putin's the the worst person of the week. But beyond that, I'll give it to Kanye.
I thought about going Putin, and everything, but that there's a political landscape that lands in that I decided to just stay away from
enough.
it.
Let's just keep it light, even when we're bashing people.
True, exactly. It's like for the worst person of the week, you want to go with something that you can generate discussion. There's not much discussion beyond like that sucks. So
yeah, he's terrible, and I agree. Yeah, he's terrible, but absolutely.
Yeah, $200 for an album, arbitrarily dropping bombs on a country that. All right, we've been teasing it for 2 or 3 weeks, Ryan. What came, what came from Florida?
All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. Give me a second to share this screen here, and I've got a video we can watch. It's about 3 minutes. It's kind of hilarious. This is Orlando, Florida. This is a passenger trying to get on an airplane to go somewhere. I don't think we actually ever find out where. But this is a pure example of why you're not supposed to get too drunk to go ahead and fly on an aircraft. So if you want to... She has a nice little motorized suitcase.
I saw the Kickstarter for that. I didn't know that it actually panned out.
I wonder if that's vodka in their water bottle.
So now she's cruising through the airport, drunk off her ass on her little motorized suitcase.
Wow. And this is in Florida.
This is Orlando's airport.
Orlando, okay.
Yeah, this is a bit of a mess. I agree that the airports have gotten way too big, but do we really need to ride on our luggage?
Yeah.
All right.
So what I'm getting to is he's about to arrest her. He's given her every opportunity.
So there's no. So what is he? Is he just asking her to not ride the?
Well, the airline has said she can't fly. She's too drunk.
Yeah. Okay.
So they called the police at the airport and sent them down, and he came down and said, okay, we have to go out of the secured area, which anything past TSA is a secured area. And he's so kindly trying to escort her out, and she's just giving him trouble. And it does get in the video, and we can stop it, and that's fine. But he and another police officer start to arrest her because she won't just leave. Yeah. And she starts spitting on him and everything else. Wow. Well, this week, she was convicted. You can't go into an airport just like any other place, because once you get past security, like, that's completely on their terms. Yeah. Just like if a shoe says a store says you have to wear a mask, you have to wear a mask because it's on their terms. It's their store. Yeah. So everybody's like, this is a public place. No, it's not. It's not a public place. You don't have rights to be here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just crazy how people have just forgot how to act in public after being sequestered in their houses for as long as they were. Everybody's kind of lost their mind and they just want to do whatever they want. We've seen a big increase of people just tossing drinks and food at fast food employees, sometimes hot coffee, sometimes smoothies. It's not by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a secret why people don't want to work these lower end retail jobs, because you just get shit upon like at every single turn.
Yeah.
So that's what came from Florida. We're going to continue to look into that because it seems like every single crazy, wacky, or zany news story comes from the Sunshine State down there. So, Ryan, let's get into a little bit of Spider-Man. The opening, we get a big reveal that, hey, Peter Parker's Spider-Man. Last movie left off, this movie picks up. which just makes me giddy and smile all the time because it physically happened right outside my job. So every time I see that beginning, him standing outside Penn Station, that makes me smile.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on J. Jonah Jameson becoming basically the Alex Jones of the MCU?
It's a smart move. Like it makes sense. Like to a large extent for the character. Like what's a modern? If you want to do a modern take on him, and on probably if you think too deep about it, it doesn't work. But no, like it makes a lot of sense because you want to do a modern take. Newspapers are not the biggest. They're not the biggest thing around. They're not the area or the way that most people get their news, and unfortunately a lot of people get their news from the internet, and the vetting that you would get with newspapers. I mean, some newspapers don't have that great of a kind of editorial process, but still, like anybody can kind of have their own website, have their own thing, and whether they're a charlatan or not. And so making him kind of an Alex Jones type of media figure, it worked, and it was hilarious. And I like the where they kind of go with the character, in this movie as well.
Yeah, he was kind of the multiverse before the multiverse was cool. Yeah. That character has spanned all three trilogies, every single Spider-Man. I love the transformation, and you couldn't ask for a better actor. You couldn't ask for a better personality doing it. Like I don't want anybody in that role ever. What do you think, IG?
First of all, that guy is perfect as J. Jonah Jameson, and to try and lead it as like all the news is going to get out in a newspaper anymore just wouldn't work in 2021, 2022. So putting him in like he's got a podcast or he's got an internet show or something is perfect. And he still carries that same J. Jonah Jameson energy when he's doing it. So it's easy to make that connection, and it's absolutely hilarious. And I think it's funny that he's like his own thing. So he's not, some major network in the MCU kind of collaboration thing. He's his own thing. So I'm sure like if they really spent a lot of time doing a Jameson story, he would show up on other things just like Alex Jones does, sometimes on Fox and other places. But look, the guy's amazing, and he does such a great job with that character, and I'm glad that he's been in all the incarnations because he's literally perfect for the role.
What would be interesting to me, so obviously it works as the antagonist to Spider-Man, but then the second half of it is that he's also, partially Peter Parker's employer. So how does that work? Like, I'd love to see how they make that work in future movies. Like, does Peter Parker then have to work for like an Alex Jones like figure? Like, is that going to be it? Is he going to be taking photos and or videos and sending them to him? Like, do they somehow work in a conspiracy angle? There's some interesting places they can kind of go with that. If the Tom Holland Spider-Man continues beyond this movie.
Yeah, J.K. Simmons is definitely one of my favorite actors. I've loved him all the way back from Oz. He showed his range throughout the years, but this is my favorite role I've ever seen him in. He just, every time he's on the screen, he nails it. IG, I love me some Jon Favreau. I mean, the guy, he's everything. For what he's done for Marvel, for what he's done for the Star Wars franchise now, but I'm sorry, folks. It must have been love, but it's over now. I didn't buy the Aunt May, Happy Hogan relationship from the jump. We're buy or sell on those two.
I've seen stranger things. The fact that my wife loves me, I don't understand half of the time. So we can go either way about it. But I guess you needed to have some reason for them to still want to communicate to make the story go. So why not? And he's a guy that like, it seems like he's really trying hard. So like he'll throw money at the problem to try and get her to spend time with him, which it seems like, he did in the last movie. Like, I'm sure that the donation to her foundation from the Starks is purely driven by Happy Hogan. And he's got a great place, and he's like, oh, you're in trouble, come stay at my house. And he's throwing money at the problem. And that's great, but he does care about her. And I guess that's what's important. If he didn't care, then it would be different. But he does care about her. So
He cares about her because she's beautiful. He cares about her because she's a great person. But that doesn't, even if half the population of the world disappeared tomorrow, Happy Hogan's not getting Aunt May. It's just not happening, kids.
Well, Happy Hogan, but Jon Favreau might. So I'd say that's where I draw the definitely as a character, Happy Hogan, yeah, probably not going to work. But I think Jon Favreau probably does. In fact, I think I've seen his wife. So, so yeah, I think he's and yeah, like as you said, like hey, you think about it, he's single-handedly, he's responsible for the MCU largely. At least if Iron Man's not a good movie, then we don't have this. And he's responsible for Star Wars. At the end of the day, like the sequel trilogy was not very well received. Especially the last couple of movies. And with him, with and the Mandalorian, like this has got people love Star Wars again, love Star Wars TV, and it's a little bit different. But think about how we, a lot of people, I guess like if you look at like just pop culture, how pop culture looked at Star Wars 3 years ago, a little bit different from where we were, the outlook right now. So yeah, he deserves, from a pop culture standpoint, like Jon Favreau can have anybody, like just on that.
Sounds like he might be dating you before long, Ryan. After the initial shock of the big reveal wore off, we get to see the reality of dating a superhero. IG. I mean, if you had the opportunity, like you said, you're happily married. Sorry, ladies, but if you had the opportunity and you were swinging single, would you date a superhero?
If I know they're a superhero, probably not. Just one, there's super villains out there, and I have to worry all the time about what's happening to my superhero while they're out there. How badly are they getting their ass kicked this week? If I'm known to be with them, then I become a target, and like it's kind of the same thing of if I'm not famous dating someone famous. Like everywhere I go, there's going to be paparazzi taking pictures and doing all kinds of other crazy shit. I don't need all that. Like if I'm famous and they follow me by myself just because of my own stuff, maybe it's different. But if every aspect of my life is being looked through a microscope because I'm with somebody who is famous, like I don't need all that. That's too crazy.
The movie is chock full of cameos. But my favorite, and at least the one that brought the crowd the biggest reaction, was the return of Charlie Cox's Daredevil. Matt Murdock came to give Peter legal advice. Ryan, do you think we're going to see another Daredevil series possibly on Hulu? Or do you think that this is just going to be cameos throughout Marvel TV and movies?
I believe that it's been confirmed that we're getting another Daredevil series. So, I mean, but it might also be that, like, because I think he's going to be in She-Hulk. So it might be that Charlie Cox kind of, is sprinkled in throughout the MCU. The great thing about the character now is that they can go, a variety of ways. I'd love to see another, Daredevil series, especially kind of under the Marvel umbrella. I'm assuming that Daredevil would go to Disney. Maybe it's not quite as dark, but I have a feeling that'd be a Disney show versus Hulu. But yeah, it's great because Matt Murdock can kind of show up anywhere. I was kind of hoping he'd be there in the final fight, but at the same time, I think what did happen worked, and I think it would have diluted what we got, so it made sense to just kind of get him a nice little cameo.
I agree. He would have been perfect to fight Lizard throughout the kind of the ending sequence.
Yeah.
IG, Doctor Strange. I'm kind of on the fence about him as a character. I love Benedict Cumberbatch as an actor. I love the Doctor Strange the movie. I like what he did in the Avengers, the Endgame and Infinity War. But did he kind of feel throwaway in this movie? Like that his involvement really didn't matter?
Well, to get some of the other things happening, it mattered, I guess. But, if he's the Sorcerer Supreme and a teenager just kind of chatting while he's casting his spell can throw it off and tear rips into the multiverse and like start bringing people around, that seems like maybe you ought to practice more, read another couple of books, go do something else. Like, that's why Wong is technically the Sorcerer Supreme now, right? Because he got snapped and he was gone for a while. Like,
yeah, he blipped.
You need to understand that. Yeah, you need a little more practice there, Doctor Strange. But yeah, I mean, it mattered because without him, the tears don't happen, and you don't get all the bad guys that we got in this one. But yeah, it seemed like he was poorly utilized, because he could have, because he is basically the MCU's Sorcerer Supreme, he could have really affected quite a bit into what's going on in the whole theme of the story.
As I play with the different frames, yeah, I really think that anything could have done what he did. Any artifact, any spell, anything gone wrong. I just think they misused him, and he was a bit of a wet blanket throughout the movie. Kind of the disappointed dad like Wong is towards him. I mean, if we remember when they opened up the sanctum, it was full of snow, so something had gone wrong there already. I just wish they would have went a different direction with this character. Ryan, the villains. The villains, many. This is the most amount of villains, I think, other than the Avengers movies, we've ever gotten in one set. So which ones did you like? Which ones didn't you like? And what would you have changed about it?
It's a good question. I think I like Jamie Foxx, Elektra. I think he got a little bit more to do, not a little more to do, but it's just more interesting. He's kind of hamming it up a little bit. I liked Doc Ock again. It was kind of great to have him in it, and then have him kind of play, the villain, but then, to kind of be a little heroic at some points. But obviously Willem Dafoe stole the show. I think rightfully so. He's such a great actor. Was like kind of born for this role. As he's born for many different roles, but he's just so great in that role. So I really enjoyed him, and I think it made sense that he was that antagonist, and so I really, or the primary antagonist. So I like that. Lizard was fine. He wasn't really kind of not as important as the other ones, and not as involved. But I really did like, I liked what they did with the villains. I think, like with any Marvel movie, it gets a little much, so you don't really get to focus on any one villain, because you've got a bunch of different people doing different things with different motivations. So it's a lot to throw into like a 2.5 hour movie. But I do think they did a good job with what they had and what they were kind of intending on doing.
How about you, IG?
Well, and following along with that, I understand that like they needed to do things to tie all of these people together. But Lizard and Sandman were completely worthless in most of this, especially Sandman. Oh my goodness. He was just, it looked really impressive. Like you've got it even on your screen there where you've got the big Sandman in the background. It looks good, but he's not all that worth a damn against any of them. He's not doing anything. He's just kind of just moving around with his sand floating through things. I like that I do like that they changed and didn't make Electro with Jamie Foxx blue and sparkly again. That he looked more like the comic book Electro, I guess, and he could generate electricity out of his head to look like that star pattern that he had, like when it was just a yellow mask originally. And Green Goblin was amazing, and so was Doc Ock. And like I loved seeing Doc Ock first, showing up and messing with. It's like, you're not Peter Parker. That moment like really kind of had me just laughing, because it's like, well, he's not your Peter Parker, but he's Peter Parker. They did a great job, and I know why they had to put Lizard in. I know why they had to put Sandman in and everything. And the only thing that was missing really from most of the classic villains and everything from the other Spider-Man movies was Venom, who coincidentally shows up in a cutscene at the end. So they did the right things with the villains. And Ryan's right. Sometimes it was a little bit much, but I think that with what they were doing, they had the right amount of energy going around to spread the love around the different villains.
Between the villains and when they started sharing experiences, you can see how gypped Andrew Garfield's trilogy really the two movies Andrew Garfield really was. The villains were weak, the writing was weak, but he was amazing. I appreciated him more outside of those movies, and I really hope that they kind of continue on, maybe with him going over to the Sonyverse and being their version of Spider-Man, because I think the fans are definitely craving it. We could retcon those movies. I did love the fact that they cleaned up Jamie Foxx's Electro. I kind of wanted to see maybe a little bit of Vulture or some Mysterio, but it was jam packed with villains. I feel like Sandman was a bit of a misstep. They went more for the visual aspect of him rather than the practical things he could do. And I think a lot of that was, I believe his name is Thomas Hayden Church, right? He was never even on set. He never even stepped into a soundstage on set. Like, they just used computer imagery of previous pictures they had of him. So I think that shortcut kind of showed. I do love the fact that they got rid of Green Goblin's mask. That thing always annoyed me. I never liked the battle armor, so I like the fact that they went with a more traditional Green Goblin look. And I mean, they did what they could do with having that short a time and that many villains in it. I definitely would have went a different way with Lizard. I hope he gets another shot in another movie and we get to see like another iteration of him, because I wasn't digging what Sony did with that. Peter's need to fix everything, Brian, kind of ended up ultimately leading to the death of Aunt May, which was sad and shocking, and we both were kind of looking at each other in the theater like, wow, that just happened. Mm-hmm. But my question to you was, why couldn't it have been Ned? I like Aunt May. Aunt May could have stayed around. Why couldn't we have killed Ned off?
Maybe because they have plans for Ned in the future, especially now that he's a sorcerer or potentially has the abilities. But no, it had to be May. Like, it just had to. I think that was a gut punch. It was unexpected. I think we're so used to the Spider-Man mythology that he is kind of responsible for Uncle Ben, and that's what kind of that's kind of what makes him Spider-Man, and that's what really that drives him. And so in this case, it's like they never gave us Uncle Ben, which we'd seen so many times, but they make it Aunt May, and I think that it works on that level. And I think it was as much as it sucks, like, it was needed. I do think again, I hope that we get more of Tom Holland, because he's just a good Spider-Man. These movies have been great, but also because I want to see the consequences of that. Because I think in this movie there was rage afterwards, and he had to be kind of pulled from the brink. But I think I would like to see him, how does that change him as a hero once he gets to kind of sit and live with that for a little bit.
IG, who was your Spider-Man MVP? Which one of the actors shined the most?
Oh my goodness. Like, there was so many things that could have gone in any direction with that, because you look, Tobey Maguire showing up, and he's obviously a little bit older and has been through a few more things, and Andrew Garfield with his self-doubt and everything, and then all the trauma that Tom Holland went through with his Spider-Man. Like, it's could go any direction. I guess for me, I'm going to say Andrew Garfield, because just the way that, like, he's like, yeah, I needed that. When they said, you're amazing. And he's like, yeah, I needed that. It kind of gave him that moment, right? Because he was shortchanged in his movies. And he did I was saying previous to even these movies coming out, like, Tobey Maguire was a good Spider-Man, but a really poor Peter Parker. And Andrew Garfield was good at both Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Now, I'm going to say that Tom Holland probably has nailed both really well, and especially like the snarkiness and everything else. And the innocence of being a child, like, really comes through with Tom Holland. But Andrew Garfield really did a good job with Spider-Man, and the writing and the villains and the way they used the villains in his movies were just poorly misrepresented. So I'm glad that he got to be here, and I'm glad that there's a new resurgence of people looking for him. So the MVP Spider-Man for me is going to be Andrew Garfield.
I would definitely agree with you there. I thought he had some of the best lines. I thought emotionally he connected with everybody else, and he brought the other two together.
And like, just to add to that, I agree. Like, I think he was. I think both. He was shortchanged. Like, the movies weren't great, and it had nothing to do with him. He was really good in those movies. And I think I agree with both you guys said about the differences between the three of them as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And I think he just was kind of stuck with kind of not great movies, and then he happened to be sandwiched between Tobey Maguire's movies, which were both 1 and 2 were great, and the Tom Holland movies, which have all been great. So I think he got a bit of it was a chance to kind of get for his character to he had a real arc, he had an arc as a character, and I mean he saved MJ, and so there was a lot in this movie that really made, even if you didn't like those movies, you couldn't help but feel for both the character and Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker and Spider-Man.
I agree. IG, do you think this movie would have been possible without Into the Spider-Verse?
I think Into the Spider-Verse really led a lot into what they were able to do here, because that just kind of gave them a new idea, which I'm glad they're doing more of those, because I really loved the first one. I mean, and you, even who's not a big animation fan, loved that movie, and that says something, because that means you've got a good story, you've got a good look, you've got smart things going on. If you can pull Cinik into an animated movie, like, you've done something right. And that gave them the ability to look and say, yeah, okay, well, it is kind of a Marvel thing to have multiple universes, so let's go ahead and swing it all together and have some fun with this. And I think that was a driving force behind having the multiverse open and doing some things here. And that's also leading into the multiverse of madness for Doctor Strange, right? So we're going to have more multiverse things going on in the next Marvel movie, which is exciting as all get out.
The final battle took place at the very renovated Statue of Liberty, holding up a Captain America shield. Ryan, do you feel like the 3-on-5 or 3-on-6 battle between the heroes and villains paid off?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely paid off. It was it again, like anything, it suffers from some of the normal issues of just kind of.
I think my question stunned him. It stunned him into silence.
It stunned him into dead silence.
Well, I'll jump over.
You're
back?
almost back.
Am I back?
You're back.
Yep. I'm back. Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know what happened. But no, I really enjoyed the final battle. Like, it stumbles a little bit just because there's so many villains, but it works again. Even if the direction and action wasn't great, it works emotionally. Like, every Spider-Man, each version got had a chance to shine. They worked well together. They worked as a team. So you have this character who generally works solo and working with, not clones, but 3 of himself, and doing, and winning. And again, each person had an emotional moment in that final battle that really, really worked. And I think, for me, the movie was always good, but that sealed it, especially that second half, and that fight, the battle at the end really did seal it. And I really, really enjoyed it. And again, I love the moment where Andrew Garfield saves MJ. Like, I think that's just just the hit that he just performed that perfectly in the way that he, you could see that there was redemption there for him. Some redemption for him, and that that he finally did it. The thing that that probably has been haunting him since that character, that he at least there's a little bit of redemption for him.
I like that, and you would think that a scene where 3 of the same character being on screen would be a bit confusing, and it really wasn't. The slight differences in their costumes and even their movement, you could tell which was which. I also like the fact that they didn't work together well right away, and they had to have a powwow and trust their Peter Tingle and go back out there and really kind of battle it out. I do think Daredevil would have worked in that spot, but I'm just happy to have him back in the MCU because Charlie Cox is the man. Strange casts a spell again, IG, and this time everybody forgets. Did we go a little bit too far with MJ and Ned even forgetting who Peter was, let alone couldn't he have just forgot he was Spider-Man?
I think to make it stick, they had to go further, and they made a decision, and I think that decision really gives a lot more room in what they can do in the future. And that's the fun thing about it, is being able to get more out of Spider-Man, because when you're tied to MJ and Ned, and you're tied to everybody else in the MCU, and everybody knows who you are, you have to make a big decision. And now this frees him to go literally any direction. And it also turned into, because now he doesn't have Aunt May, he doesn't have support from Happy Hogan, he doesn't have any of those things. Now it turns into Spider-Man just like in the other ones, where he's kind of living a little bit in poverty out on his own. because nobody knows who he is. I mean, even his grades and everything from existing in the world have disappeared, right? So he was an MIT candidate. He was known to be very intelligent, and that's all gone. So now he's learning to have to deal with the stuff on his own, which I think gives a little bit more grounding and a little bit more room to go in other directions, because there are still supervillains. He's still going to swing around as Spider-Man, so Spider-Man's going to become known in the MCU pretty quickly, but nobody knows who he is, and he doesn't have the support that he used to. I mean, he doesn't even have like Stark Tech anymore to help lead him around. So
Yeah,
he's really got to make it work.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing to me. Like, we could lose Ned and MJ. I didn't like them going that deep into it, but losing the cheat code, which is the Iron Spider suit, changes everything going forward. And he kind of goes back to a comic book, or even the previous couple sets of movies. They're all on the same level now. And I honestly hope that we get a trilogy of just Spider-Man being Spider-Man and not Spider-Man pretending to be Iron Man. But overall, I really loved everything about this movie, and I kind of think that we need 3 more of these with Tom Holland. But, he's kind of said that he doesn't want to do it too much longer, and if he's doing it in his 30s, he feels like he's kind of failed as an actor. But I kind of feel like Robert Downey Jr. used to do similar things as well. Whenever he was done with an Iron Man project, he was like, well, I'm probably done after this. That just makes Sony or Marvel throw one more zero on that check to make him come back. So I don't think we've seen the last of Tom Holland.
I hope we haven't.
Me too. Ryan, what are your final thoughts on the movie and your rating?
So I, as we've kind of discussed, like, I really enjoyed the movie. I thought, it did suffer from some of the issues that we have with the bigger Marvel movies, where you have too many villains. And so there's a lot, too many villains, too much stuff going on, too many heroes. And so there's so much going on that's kind of hard to get a lot of the, character moments that we want, and and the story can be a bit convoluted. And in this case, it was very convoluted. We did get some of the character moments, so that was good, but it did have some of those just big Marvel movie issues. But beyond that, I mean, I think it starts strong. The middle section's it drags, but once we get the 3 Peter Parkers, it's really great. I mean, I thought they were going to be there for like a glorified cameo, and they were legitimately like an essential part of the movie, for that second half of the movie, and it was great. I mean, just their chemistry was great. Just the way that they called out some of the differences in how they design things or didn't design things, or were born with certain, or had like with the web shooters that one made them, one it was built into them. Like, all that stuff was really cool. And I love the cameos and the Easter eggs. So while it did suffer from some of those issues, it was still just a fun time. There were just a lot of jump on your seat and share moments, and it really hit the emotional notes that it needed to hit, especially with Aunt May and with Peter in the end. Making the decision not to kill the Green Goblin. I think I really enjoyed the movie, and it's it's still not quite at the level of Into the Spider-Verse for me, but it's right up there. And it's probably my second favorite Spider-Man movie next Into the Spider-Verse. So I would give it a solid 8.5.
IG.
So I think this is the kind of stuff that they need to do in the Marvel Universe, where they break new boundaries, right? They hit new things and include other things. Seeing Daredevil in this, and catching that thing flying through the window, and there's like, how'd you do that? I'm a really good lawyer. That was one of the best lines I've heard in a Marvel movie in a long time. There's a lot of good stuff to like this, and even Doctor Strange's performance, and I think they needed to put him in this and have the multiverse thing happen so that they could get into the Multiverse of Madness, which is coming out in just a couple of months now, I think. It's a lot of stuff going on, right? It's breakneck stuff, and it does lag a bit in the middle, but it doesn't lag for too long. And the gut punch of Aunt May being killed is huge, and I think it was a good decision, because killing Ned would have gut punched, but not near as much as losing Aunt May, especially because every other Spider-Man incarnation that we've had live action, especially, Aunt May's alive and kicking and moving around and doing just fine. So losing Aunt May is a big thing, especially like Ryan said earlier that we didn't see anything happen to Uncle Ben. Some of the villains were a little bit weak, but I think if they would have brought everybody in and done all that stuff, even if they'd have added Vulture and Rhino and Shocker and some of the other things going on that have been in other movies, that would have put it way too much, and we couldn't have paid attention rightfully to anything going on. So I think they hit the right amount of balance. Again, I wasn't a big fan of Sandman or Lizard, but, I wasn't a fan of them in their movies either. It was a little bit weak. But they had enough other things with Ock and especially Green Goblin. Like, that was so well done that the whole movie just came together. And it all worked. And I'm excited, and I'm hoping that, Tom Holland's not going to leave and not going to do any more Spider-Man movies. And I guess if he does, then maybe we'll go back into some of the other Earth numbers and go back to Andrew Garfield or somebody else. So the movie for me, I'm going to give it probably a 9. I really enjoyed it. It was a great movie. It's not the best Marvel movie, but it's one that I'll watch repeatedly. Like, anytime I find it, I'll probably sit down and watch it.
Not only was this the best Marvel movie, it was the best Spider-Man movie. It's the best movie I've seen in a long time. And after being out of the theaters for a year and a half, I couldn't have been more excited, along with everybody else in the theater, when we got these huge cameos like Charlie Cox or Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire, who was basically a pariah in Hollywood over the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years after a movie came out, basically saying that he's a really bad guy. So it was good to see everybody back. It was a lot of fun. The only knock I can really say is it did at times feel like an advertisement for the Multiverse of Madness. And then we got an advertisement for the Multiverse of Madness in the post clips. So that was a little insulting. You're selling me something when I'm not even out of the theater from the last thing. So I was a little annoyed at that. I really thought we could have done more with Doctor Strange. But in the length of the movie, it was kind of long. After not loving the Eternals and not loving Shang-Chi, it was nice to get back to a property that not only am I familiar with, but I have a passion for. It was a masterpiece in a lot of ways. I love the camaraderie of the guys, the Spider-Men. I love the way they not only are together on screen, but it seems like that they become friendly in real life, and I think that's really cool. The villains were fun. They were great. I would go see Doc Ock and Green Goblin in 10 more Spider-Man films. Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe are just masterful at what they do. They stole parts of the movie. They'll forever be probably my favorite Spider-Man villains. I need more Tom Holland trilogies. Just back up the Brinks trick. Give him whatever he wants, because without the Stark gadgets, it's more of a true Spider-Man feel to me, and he's really coming of age into that role. The cameos, heroes and villains alike, made it perfect. It was the perfect it was the perfect ending for the trilogy, and it ranks definitely as high as it can go in the MCU for me. So I'll give it about a 9 or 9.5. We'll go to a 9.5 just because I want to be slightly better than you guys. And I can't wait for you guys to see what we do next week. That's about all the time we have for this week. I'd like to thank my friend IG and Ryan for joining me. We got something special and old school lined up, so stay tuned for that. And then the week after that, we're going to review the new Batman movie, which we're all excited to talk about. So, Ryan, IG, until next time.
Don't get captured.
Exactly. Now, if I can only get out of here. Oh, there we go.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CinicRadio.com. Available for download on iTunes.
So how was that?
Went
good.
well.
Yeah.